Welcome to HipMojo Show 27. I'm your host, Ashkan Karbas-Frushan.
And I'm Rebecca Brayton.
And today we're going to talk about news, online news in particular, and online video news to be specific. So?
Well, AOL is looking to get back on the radar. They're hiring an ad agency to refresh their image and to kind of get the word out on why people should care about AOL again. So, should people care about AOL?
Yes and no. I mean, when you look at the first wave of internet media companies like Tripod, GeoCities, Broadcast.com, they've all sort of gone away. There's Yahoo and there's AOL. And I think there's a lot of, they become easy targets because people say, well, these guys have been around. How are they relevant? And the truth is that, Yahoo remains the premier digital media company in the world. And AOL is still a pretty strong company with very strong brands like Engadget, as well as TechCrunch and Huffington Post, which they bought recently. I think the challenge with AOL really is more the business press and the sort of business media that says, well, most of the revenue still comes from the traditional dial-up business. And people laugh saying, people don't even know they're still paying for this dial-up business. And that is going to zero very quickly. So it's a question of when they brought on Tim Armstrong as chairman in AOL from Google, they said, how quickly can Tim Armstrong take AOL from a dial-up business to an ad-supported media company? But at the end of the day, I think AOL is going to be an easy target. And it doesn't help that they go out and buy things like TechCrunch, which means they become pretty much the owner of one of the leading, techie blogs out there. And, by paying $300 million for Arianna Huffington's Huffington Post, a lot of people are going to raise eyebrows and say, what the hell? What's going on with AOL? I do think, though, that you always have to separate what, the bloggers and the analysts and the media says with what the users say, and again, what the advertisers say. AOL has an uphill challenge with all three, but maybe they should worry less about the crazy bloggers and the media and worry more about the users and the advertisers. I think if they worry about over the latter two, they'll be fine. But they do have a lot of challenges. Their dial-up business is going to zero. So it's an interesting story to follow. We'll see what happens. And disclosure, we provide content to a lot of videos to AOL and 5min, and I write articles for TechCrunch once a week.
Fair enough. So, as discussed, AOL bought Huffington Post last year, and now it's using HuffPo to launch an online news network. Is this going to work?
It's ambitious, and it's not that big of a surprise. So what's really interesting is they really want to launch an online video network to compete with like CNN and MSNBC and Fox News, but on the internet. It's impressive that they're going to attempt this. They're going to put $30 million behind it. I think the challenge is that news is a very fickle kind of programming. I've always said news, how-tos, porn, humor, and I think there's one more which escapes me right now. And yeah, and user-gen content. Those are content that is very different from everything else, auto content, lifestyle, fashion. News sometimes is not brand safe, right? But people want to watch it. So you could have a billion people watching the video of Gaddafi getting killed, but you can't monetize it, right? And then the flip side is a lot of news people don't care about. I think traditional model of linear programming at 6 o'clock news and 11 o'clock news, the editor decides to put something in front of the audience and they'll sort of follow. I think online it's changed. It hasn't just changed in terms of users caring more about cats falling in toilets and dogs on skateboards or crazy images of Gaddafi getting killed. I think the bigger challenge with news is that video is actually very challenging. One, when news breaks, you tend to hear about it nowadays on Twitter. Osama bin Laden getting assassinated. I found out about that on Twitter. Steve Jobs resigning. Steve Jobs passing away. Twitter. And one reason for that is that CNN actually has to, go figure, check the facts. But I think when it comes to video, and we know this, you're a producer, tell me, what is the turnaround time to get a video produced? Yeah.
Well, we could probably, depending on what the subject was, within a couple of days, but...
Yeah, okay, if you want it to be a high-quality video like we tend to like to produce, it's a couple of days by the time you get the B-roll, fact-check, proofread, voiceover, put it all together.
Hopefully we would have something, like in the case of an Elizabeth Taylor passing away or something like that, we might have expected it coming, so we might have something a little prepared.
Yeah, we've learned actually that, most media companies have an obituary list. Many times, New York Times, I believe it was them, they accidentally published an obituary on Steve Jobs before it was actually, the proper time. But aside from that, you could basically go out when Amy Winehouse died, it was on a weekend, we could have within an hour had a video just using one of her songs as a background, saying Amy Winehouse died, she was born this date, she died here, she's had these issues. We'll follow the story as it happens. The problem is what? That still takes a few hours or like minutes to produce. By then, people are on Twitter, there's a bunch of articles, and I think that's the disconnect, which is what they want to accomplish works with TV because there's so much more ad dollars and they could force feed it to audiences. I'm not so sure it'll work online, but I understand why AOL, having bought Huffington Post, which has become a power in news, having bought 5min, which is a power in video, and they have all that distribution, and having aspirations to become the Associated Press of the online video space, I can imagine why they need to throw another Hail Mary when you consider that their dial-up business is going to zero. I don't think it'll be as successful as their expectations are, because there was, on Adweek, there was a good number. They said, let's be optimistic and assume that 5% of HuffPo's audience is going to watch it, the videos. That's basically 1 to 2 million people. And those people are going to basically watch it for 10, 15, 30 seconds. So it's going to be very in and out, fleeting. That's not going to be big enough numbers to make a dent for advertisers. And before long, like with Patch, they'll either have to switch gears and maybe put a little bit less investment or change the programming. I still am a believer that don't fix something if it ain't broken. I think news actually works to some extent with TV and radio just because it's a different market. Online, it's really about the quick articles, the Twitter feeds, the first initial reaction, and then you could let TV, bring it all together when the more higher polished things. And our model has been pretty straightforward, which is, we try to be ready for these news-breaking items, and then we will have something a bit more polished and a biography. But if they want to go for it, good luck. But it's an uphill battle, to put it mildly. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, we haven't even talked about the evergreen nature of the videos, that they're going to be online forever, and then how useful are they going to be? I mean, that's the thing, right? Like, if you think about it, let's say Steve Jobs passing, unfortunately, you could have foreseen it a bit because he quit, and he basically said, I ain't quitting unless I have to. So that you could see it coming. But when Amy Winehouse dies, even though she had issues with substance problems, you could basically pick to create a quick and dirty 2-minute video about her life, put a music video, and say, that's it, that's all. Or you could say, I'm not going to scramble for that initial noise, which is going to be dominated by Twitter and the CNN refreshes and the Drudge reports or whatever, but I'm going to take a day or two to put a really nice, polished biography together, which will be good forever. We've taken that model. I think it's a smarter model. But again, if you're AOL, you want the Hail Mary. You want to radically redefine news. It's ambitious. It sounds good. It'll get some headlines. Whether or not the results are going to be there, I think we'll wait and see. But it's an uphill battle. Yeah. Meanwhile, you hear that Univision and ABC are considering launching a news channel. Is this the same thing, or is it different? Well, it's the same that it's news. It's very different in that I mean, factually, Univision and ABC, which is owned by Disney, are looking at partnering to launch a TV, traditional television, cable sort of competitor to MSNBC, Fox News, CNN. Now, the reason why is very straightforward. Telemundo is controlled by Comcast, competitor to Univision. So Univision, their main market is the Hispanic market. But believe it or not, even though the Hispanics in the US are a rapidly growing dominant demo, most of them actually watch a lot of English programming. The reports suggest that they watch a lot more English programming than Spanish programming. So if you're Univision, you have to say, wait a second, we can try to double down on Spanish programming, but we're basically we're fighting a losing battle. So for them, it's key to get in front of their audience, put in front of their audience a English equivalent. Now, what's the challenge? News is very expensive. In 1996, Disney actually looked at doing a competitive product to Fox News and MSNBC and CNN. And because Rupert Murdoch came out and basically bought distribution by paying $10 per subscriber, then Disney threw in the towel and said, we're not going to compete, that's crazy. Now, a little parentheses that at the time, the content companies, in that case Fox, was buying distribution, which is why online is great, because you could build distribution for free. But that's a separate point. But my point is, about 16 years ago, it was a lot healthier. TV was a healthier market, and ABC ran the numbers and said, forget it, we're not going to do this. What has changed? I don't know. I think this is more Univision saying we need to put a product in front of our audience. And two, One major thing that's changed now on Disney's side is Disney obviously owns, along with Hearst as a small partner, they own ESPN. So I think for them, they say if we are to leverage ESPN in sports and leverage our sales force, then we can probably have a competitive news offering. I don't buy it. I think it's a long shot. I think as they get closer, they will probably scale back their ambition. Or ironically, they might launch I'm guessing here, or I would almost urge them to build a smaller online product. I think that would be probably more interesting because they're already producing all this. Don't forget, Huffington Post is largely an article and aggregation site, and their power in video comes from 5min, which again aggregates. So I think if one of these two companies, as we're sort of talking out loud and brainstorming, if one of these companies were to go into the online news model, it would actually be the partnership between Univision and ABC. Just saying. All right, next question.
Okay, so we've basically been discussing this the whole time, but give us kind of the Coles Notes version of why it's hard to produce news online.
5 words: expensive, timely, not brand safe, and consumer demand is not really there. I think you take a look at what people watch, and it's not at all what I think advertisers and distributors want them to watch. So that really wasn't 5 words, but that gives you the Coles Notes version.
Fair enough. So will online viewers watch news online?
Sorry, the 5th word would have been not evergreen. That's, I'll summarize that.
Makes sense. So will online viewers watch news online, and will advertisers support it?
I think you're always going to get a percentage of the audience that will go after and want to find news. I think what online has done, and YouTube is both prospering and suffering as a result, is with TV, you could sort of not censor, but you can control what your audience is going to watch. With the internet, we've seen that is not the case. So users will never watch what advertisers and distribution companies want users to watch. They'll always watch more porn, more graphic violence, unmonetizable UGC. But the challenge is there is always going to be some kind of demand for news. And I think the companies that could leverage video with articles, and I guess images as well, and then maximize real-time data. What are people talking about on Twitter? What are people talking about on Tumblr? Et cetera, with video, with the timely versus evergreen nature, I think there's an opportunity. AOL has a lot of the assets, as does Univision and Disney's ABC, but you would almost want them to swap strategies right now. I think if Univision and ABC did the online video network, that might be more interesting. I don't necessarily think that HuffPo or AOL's $30 million investment, as I see what they're going to go do and what they have and what they don't, I think they face an uphill battle. So yes, people will watch news, but I don't think it'll be enough to justify how expensive it is. And there are people that are trying to tackle that problem, but don't expect a Hail Mary solution overnight.
Fair enough. This has been HipMojo Show 27. Tune in next time.